Hi, and welcome back to Locker Talk. This is season two. And the reason this is season two is because we have made a few changes around here. So hopefully you've checked out last week's posts, and that'll give you some explanation on that. But welcome back. Every week we talk about something sports reveal and development can change because sports have this incredible ability to expose patterns that often stay hidden elsewhere. A bad call, a tough conversation, a mistake, a setback, a pressure moment. And suddenly we get a glimpse into how someone currently responds when things don't go according to plan. This week, I want to talk about a pattern I saw recently and what it teaches us about performance, leadership, and development. A few days ago, I was standing in a baseball field watching an 11-year-old pitcher. When he first stepped onto the mound, he looked great. Confident, composed, in control. In fact, my dad was standing next to me and leaned over and said, "Wow, this kid can really pitch. This team is pretty stacked with pitchers." And honestly, I agreed. Everything about him and the way he moved and the way he confidently stood on the mound looked the part. And then baseball happened. He gave up a hit. He then walked a batter. And a few batters later, another mistake happened. Nothing unusual, nothing catastrophic. The kind of inning that happens to young pitchers every weekend across the country. But then something caught my attention. He turned toward the dugout and mouthed three words to his coach: "Take me out." And the moment I saw it, I found myself paying less attention to the game and more attention to what was happening inside this athlete. Because the mistake really wasn't what interested me. What interested me was what happened next. His shoulders had dropped, his energy changed. The athlete who started the inning and the athlete standing on the mound in that moment looked like two completely different kids. And if you've spent enough time around youth sports, you've probably seen the exact same thing happen. Maybe it's not a pitcher, maybe it's a basketball player who misses a shot and suddenly stops looking to score. Maybe it's a soccer player who, makes a turnover and starts playing cautiously for the rest of the game. Maybe it's your own athlete. Maybe it's just one mistake that happened and it's like somebody flipped a switch. And as parents, that's usually the moment we start asking questions. What happened? Why can't they let it go? Why does one mistake seem to change everything? And I think that's where most of us accidentally focus on the wrong thing. I know I have before, because we focus on the mistake. The mistake becomes the story. But what if the mistake isn't actually the story? One of the core beliefs that guide everything I do is that pressure doesn't create behavior, pressure reveals behavior. The mistake did not create the response, the mistake revealed the response. And that's a completely different way of looking at it. Because if we believe mistakes are the problem, then we spend all of our energy trying to eliminate mistakes. If we think that mistakes were something to do with that kid's pitching, we're going to throw them into pitching lessons. We're going to work on different things that happen on the mound. But mistakes aren't going anywhere. You and I know that as adults, not in sports, not in life, not in leadership. The athletes who perform at the highest level still make mistakes. Like, hello, every social media comment out there, right? Like criticizing what these high level athletes do. Professionals who become really successful still make mistakes. The leaders we admire still make mistakes. The difference is rarely the mistake itself. The difference is recovery. And that's something I think we really, truly underestimate. I've spent years watching athletes and years working with adults and leaders. And one pattern that shows up over and over and over again is that the people who perform consistently are not the people who avoid adversity. They're not the people who don't make the mistakes. They're the people who recover from it faster. They return to the present moment faster. They regain access to their abilities faster. They don't allow one mistake to become the next mistake and the next mistake and the next mistake. When I watched that pitcher, what I saw wasn't really a pitching problem. It wasn't even necessarily a confidence problem. What I saw was a recovery challenge. Now that's important because a lot of parents immediately jump to confidence. My kid just lacks confidence. They need to, feel like they can do it, right? And maybe sometimes that's true, but maybe not. And that's where curiosity really truly matters. What parents often call confidence can be several different patterns. Sometimes it's emotional reactivity. Sometimes it's fear of failure. Sometimes it's a pressure overload. Sometimes it is confidence collapse. And sometimes it's something else entirely. the visible behavior may look identical while the underlying pattern is completely different. And that's why I become much more interested in understanding than fixing, because you cannot intentionally develop what you do not understand. And I think that's where sports becomes such an incredible teacher. Sports expose these moments constantly, every practice, every game, every missed shot, every strikeout, every turnover, uh, every weekend. Pressure reveals behavior over and over and over again. And when behavior becomes visible, development becomes possible. And that's really the opportunity hidden inside these moments. Not preventing mistakes, not preventing mistakes, but developing recovery, helping athletes learn that mistakes are events, not identities. Helping them learn how to reconnect with the present moment, helping them learn how to ask a better question, not what just happened, but what's next, right? What's the next play? What's the next job I have to do? Because eventually this stops being about sports. Eventually, somebody hangs up their cleats for the last time. They put their skates on for the very, very last time. And the reason I pay attention to youth sports is because I already know where these patterns often go. I've seen the athlete who struggles to recover from mistakes become the professional who struggles to recover from criticism. I've seen the athlete who carries one bad inning to the rest of the game becomes the leader who carries one difficult conversation into the rest of the week. And I've also seen the opposite. I've seen athletes learn recovery. I've seen them learn resilience. I've seen them learn emotional control under pressure. And later, I've watched those same skills show up in careers, leadership roles, relationships, and life. And that's why this matters. Not because we're trying to create perfect little athletes, not because we're trying to eliminate mistakes, but because sports reveal patterns really early, and development gives us the opportunity to shape them early. So the next time you watch your athlete shut down after a mistake, I encourage you to resist the urge to immediately fix it. Instead, get curious. Ask yourself a different question. What is this revealing? Because the mistake may not be the problem. What happens after the mistake might be. And that's where the development opportunity really lives. And that's where youth sports become human development, and where the things that we're experiencing with our kids becomes the things that help them become resilient adults who can launch into this world really well. So, hopefully this was helpful. And if you enjoyed this, tune in next week, share this, comment, definitely come ask me questions and have a conversation. I would love to chat on any of these ideas. I could talk about it all day. And I love hearing new perspectives. So I hope that you have a great rest of the week. Tune in Friday, and I will dive deeper into what this really looks like when we become the adults who learn how to recover from mistakes. And as always, I hope you put down the popcorn and get in the game.